Hello student, welcome to standard 9th geography. Let us continue learning chapter 3rd, Exogenetic processes, part 1, and now we are studying part 3 of this lesson. In the previous lecture we had seen exfoliation. The rock is peeling like an onion. One by one layers are coming out is considered as exfoliation. Then we had studied that mechanical weathering occurs because of following things, that is temperature, frost, crystal growth, release of pressure and water. So in the previous lecture we have seen how temperature works in it. Now we are going to see frost. You know that the volume of the water increases when it freezes. For example, if you fill the water bottle fully and close the cap, if it is the glass water, and keep it in the deep fridge, next morning what you see is that the water has turned to ice, but the water bottle breaks. That is, the mass of ice is greater, the volume is greater than the water, and therefore the water breaks. So in the same way, in areas where the temperature drops below 0 degrees Celsius for quite some time, the water accumulated in the cracks and crevices in the rocks freezes. So wherever there are cracks and water has accumulated in it, this water, as the temperature goes below 0 degrees Celsius, this water turns into ice, and as I told you that ice requires more space, more, the volume increases, and therefore the freezed ice increase, its volume increases. This leads to tension in the rocks and they shattered, they fall apart from each other, they shattered away. So this is the work of frost. Because of formulation of ice, the rocks shattered away. Then the crystal growth. In rocky coast, waves hit the sea cliff. The water is alkaline. The water of the sea is alkaline, that is salty water. Some water droplets hits the cracks in the rock. So because of the waves constantly moving forward and backward, the some water droplets hits this crack. In this crack, alkaline water, the soluble material in the rock gets dissolved. So whatever soluble material is there, it gets solved in the water. This leads to formation of small holes in the rock. This is the effect of solution. So because of the solution is created, alkaline water, and then the holes are created. Alkaline water gets stored in these holes. So it remains in this hole, and because of heat, this water turns into water vapor. So the evaporation takes place and only crystals of alkaline material remains in the rock. So whatever salt particles remains over there, the crystal remains over there. Crystals occupy more space. So like the ice, these also requires more space. This causes tension in the rock. Holes are formed in the rocks. So small holes become bigger holes and these holes are formed. It looks like a honeycomb. So these looks like a honeycomb. Exactly in this way, my dear student, the holes are created and the holes become gradually bigger and bigger because of alkaline water. So this is also a part of weathering. So the next part of mechanical weathering is release of pressure. It is not that tension is created in the rock only because of temperature, freezing of water or crystallization. The outer layer of the rock exerts pressure on the inner or lower layer. So as we have cut the onion and we have seen the layer, in the same way rocks has layer, and rock layer, top layer gets heated and the inner layer comparatively is get less heat and the still inner layer remains cool. So the pressure of this outer layer falls on the inner layer. The outer layer of the rock exerts pressure on the inner or lower layer. So this pressure is given on the inner or the lower layer. When this pressure ceases to exist, the lower or inner layer gets freed from the pressure. So when there is no pressure, it ceases the pressure, then no pressure. Because of this, weathering takes place. This also leads to weathering, and therefore the rocks get separated and they fall apart. Let us see the next topic, that is water. Some areas experience more rainfall than other. That is but natural that we know. Mausiram and Cherrapunji experiences the highest rainfall in the world. On the other hand, Shillong is just close by and this Shillong gets very scanty rainfall. So in the same way in Maharashtra too, Mathiran, Mahabaleshwar gets highest amount of rainfall. The Sahyadris, the Konkan region gets high amount of rainfall. On the other hand, the Deccan Plateau, that is Maharashtra Plateau, gets very scanty rainfall. So some areas experience more rainfall than the other. In such areas, soaking of rock water also causes weathering of some rocks like sandstone or conglomerate. Conglomerate means coming together, forming a heap or the joined together. इकट्ठा होना, गट्ठा होना. These rocks are formed because of pressure on the agglomeration of sand particles. So what is agglomeration is coming together, forming a heap of for example heap of sand or heap of mud, in this way. So agglomeration of sand particles. sand particles coming together. Mud also makes sand particles come together. So here sand as well as mud gets mixed up together and they come together. When water penetrates such rocks where mud and sand particles are there in this, when the water soaks in it, penetrates in it, the particles get loose and separate from the main rock. So particles become loose because of the it remains granular. So this is like granular weathering. You can see here how the particles have been separated from each other. They are almost like the jawar or bajra grains, sand particles, and they get separated. This is also a type of weathering. You can see again here how the granular, it looks like a grain, exactly like bajra grain or any other grain. This is called granular weathering. So you will be asked question, write a note on granular weathering. So you should be able to write this answer. Then let us move on to the next question, that is block disintegration. What is block disintegration? We are going to learn now. Sometimes both temperature and water are responsible for weathering. So temperature, we have seen during the daytime rocks get heated up, and night time they cool down. So every day it's heated because of the heat and because of the coolness, rocks subtract and expansion goes on. Because of that, weathering takes place. Because of water goes in it, because of when the temperature goes below 0°C, then it forms ice, and then ice mass requires more space, and therefore disintegration takes place. So temperature and water are responsible for weathering. Difference in temperature causes contraction and expansion. So a rock's particle contracts and expands. Because of this contraction and expansion, widening the joints or the cracks in the rock. So it widens the cracks. Water accumulates in such wide joints, and big blocks of rocks separate from each other. So here the cracks are there, and water goes in this crack, and then because of this water, the cracks are widen, and large chunk of the mountain is fallen down. This is called block disintegration. So we can have a look of block disintegration in 3.B figure. Just a minute, my dear student. You can see how the water penetrates in the rock, and then block disintegration. So whole chunk of rock part falls down. So this is called the block disintegration. Now you will be asked the question, what is block disintegration? So what is so we should be able to write that block disintegration, then granular weathering, and then this is the type of weathering which causes because of temperature, frost, crystal growth, and water release of pressure. This is called the mechanical weathering. Now we in the next lecture we are going to study chemical weathering. How it takes place we are going to see in more detail. So my dear student, please read this part, try to understand the concept and draw the figure if you can, the uh, granular weathering. Block disintegration is given on earlier on the page of 23 3.1b. So try to draw it neatly, try to understand it. Till then, goodbye and have a nice time.